one banner only, and that's NBA titles.
The Lakers are the world champions. The Lakers have won it again.
And we are live. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Rings and Things, where banners aren't optional. They are tradition. I am so excited, Johnathan. Thank you again for coming back to the show. I'm excited to have Lakers Legacy to talk about Lakers. And we are officially 30 days away from official, season for the new Lakers season. And what I wanted to first start off with is, first of all, Johnathan, how are you? How's everything? And how was the end of your summer?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back on, Omar, in this low stakes episode. I'm glad to have a low stakes sort of episode before we, this is the calm before the NBA storm. And so I am kind of just relaxing for a hot second because we know what's about to come. We got our fantasy football leagues underway, start of the NFL season. We have like a good, I want to say 2 weeks to just kind of focus on football. And then we have to divide our minds once again into the NBA, into the NBA storm. But otherwise, I am doing good and excited to just kind of, round robin some Lakers topics with you today.
Yeah, and that's the whole idea of tonight. Let's keep it light. Let's keep it fun. It's like you said, it's that lull period, even though basketball has a thing about it where it's always in talks and it's in motion in terms of the news cycle. So whether it's, player acquisitions or this Clippers situation, we'll get into it later in the show. What I wanted to first talk about with you, Johnathan, is the question that is tied to today's show is, will the Lakers win a championship? And what I really want to kind of deep dive into with you is, what are the things that need to go right for the Lakers for them to win a championship? And I will play a little devil's advocate as you make your points and kind of point to what could go wrong for the Lakers. And I feel like, as we're bouncing off of our ideas, there's probably a bunch that we can kind of tackle. And, without further ado, I'll give you the floor and let me know what you think could go wrong. Oh, sorry, what you think needs to happen and go right for the Lakers to win a championship.
Well, first, can the Lakers win the championship? Yes. Whenever you have Luka Doncic and LeBron James, there's always definitely a chance, especially if it's going to be LeBron's last year. I don't know if you saw his latest Nike ad, like the Forever King and I don't know what's going on, man. This might be LeBron's last season, or at least last season with the Lakers. And so with that comes a lot of hype, comes a lot of, individual internal motivation on LeBron's end. We're not sure where his motivations lie, but whenever you have LeBron James and Luka Doncic, there's always a chance. Now, the West got a hell of a lot tougher this past summer, even tougher than it already has been. So in order for the Lakers to win the championship, one, yes, the Lakers can win a championship. Am I confident that they're going to win a championship? No, because a lot of things have to shake out right for the Lakers. As we all know, they were able to check mark a lot of things on their to-do list this past offseason. They weren't able to check mark one big one, though, and that is the using the 2031st first for like a big trade, right? They were able to get these great bargain bin deals with DeAndre Ayton, Marcus Smart, Jake LaRavia. Some of them were unexpected, or depending on who you talk to, maybe expected behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. But the Lakers still have that bullet in their gun of, being able to use a 2031st first. And we're not sure if they're reserving it for summer when they can presumably trade 3 firsts along with the 2026 first. But yeah, to answer your question, the Lakers can win a championship, but their margin for error is super thin. And I almost want to say that as currently constructed, they can only win if a bunch of other things go wrong for the rest of the league, and if all of the things on their end of the ledger go right. And so I'll start it off by saying the number one thing that I think has to go right for the Lakers is they have to have their healthiest season that they've ever had, in my opinion. So if all of their, I want to say if all of their top 7 players, and this is hard to do in today's day and age, if all of their top 7 players are able to play at least 65 plus games and they're all healthy by the time the playoff starts, I think we're off to a good start, because as we all know, sometimes the NBA champion, it's just a war of attrition. Whoever wins kind of is just the healthiest by the end of it all. And so if you're telling me that Luka, LeBron, AR, Rui, Jared Vanderbilt in particular, particularly the players who haven't been healthy the last few years, are actually healthy this upcoming season, then I would bump that percentage up a little bit higher. You know, I would be a little bit more optimistic. And that goes for Marcus Smart, that goes for DeAndre Ayton. Like, if we can have one of our healthiest seasons, and I forget, I believe, I'm not sure if Mark Walter has already started implementing like new medical people or whatever, if there was a new hire, but if that process can get started and we can start to see some changes and improvements in that department, then I think, you know, that's a good starting point.
Yeah. So to add to that point, that they did hire Dallas's ex-strength and conditioning coach. So from the experts on Twitter, they were highly favoriting that move. And I believe there was an award or some sort of milestone that individual hit with the Mavericks. So hopefully that is a good, connector piece to your, healthy season that needs to come at bay. Let me dive a little bit deeper into that, because that is a huge factor. And to play a little devil's advocate, the new players that did get added, and we'll put LeBron aside for now because he always does pick up nagging injuries, but for the most part, nothing too major. What are your concerns with Marcus Smart? The time that he's missed over the past 2-3 years for his stints with Memphis / Washington, and then also DeAndre Ayton with Portland. And I could add Jake LaRavia to that too. Jake has missed some time too.
Yeah, Jake has missed some time. I will say, well, I'll start with Jake since you brought him up first. One, I'm glad that Jake is only 23 years old. So, and I think the injuries that he has accumulated, they've been more knick-knack injuries versus like huge, like he needs like ACL tear surgery or anything like that. So I'm a little encouraged by that. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he had his healthiest season last year. So we're at least on the up and up with Jake. And again, he's only 23 years old. I'm not too worried about him. Marcus Smart. So I'll caveat Marcus Smart for a little bit because I had him in fantasy basketball, I think the last 2 years or so. And so, look, he's had a very unhealthy last 2 years. There's no denying that. But I will say it's a little bit inflated because the Memphis Grizzlies, especially his first year there, I think Marcus Smart had a what's it called, like a rolling status of knick-knack injuries as well. And his first season, by the time he was kind of ready to come back, the Grizzlies were like totally out of it, and they just decided to like rest and sit everyone. Now that may have only tacked on like 15 more games to Marcus Smart's season, and he only played like 23, so that wouldn't have been as much. But I'll just say that I think Marcus Smart's injuries have been a little bit more pronounced the last 2 years. Having said that, I think I am the most worried about him just because of what he's like 30 years old, 31 years old coming into this season at this point. And if you've ever seen Marcus Smart play basketball with the Boston Celtics, I mean, that dude goes hard every single time. I mean, he won Defensive Player of the Year just like 2 or 3 years ago. And so even without like the major injury, like it would not surprise me whatsoever if, we are heading into those years where Marcus Smart just kind of starts to wear down just naturally. And it is kind of like a death by 1,000 paper cuts with Marcus Smart, where it doesn't need to be anything catastrophic. It's just like, dude, the guy is running on empty maybe at this point, and he may only be 30 years old, but how hard he's been playing throughout his NBA career, maybe that's more like a 35-year-old body. So that's what I'm most concerned by. Like, in terms of his mental state, I'm very high on Marcus Smart. I think he has a lot of motivation coming into this year, but it's all about whether his body's actually right. And I think it's a little bit too of, the last 2 years, he hasn't really been on competitive teams. So you kind of got to caveat that a little as well. Like how how much more willing would he have been to like come back early or something like that. I'm glad he didn't, by the way, because it was pointless for him too the last 2 years. But yeah, Marcus Smart, I'm most worried about. You mentioned, who else did you mention?
DeAndre Ayton. Yeah.
I don't think he's had too many big time injuries, right? And when the Portland Trailblazers, I feel like it's also been one of those circumstantial things where it's kind of been like, yeah, we'll sit you tonight to play like all of our young dudes. So DeAndre, I'm not too worried about, and I don't think he has a history of.
So he played 40 games last year, and then 55 the year before. 67. So he's before he went to Portland, he was averaging like above 60 games.
Yeah, so that's the biggest caveat I'll give. Like Portland and teams like Memphis, at least the 2 years ago when they were tanking, like I'm almost very dubious about, especially also the Utah Jazz. You're like, if you look at Lauri Markkanen's like last year's, like, oh man, this dude's super unhealthy. But I also had Lauri Markkanen on my fantasy team, and I know for a fact that like that dude was healthy, and they were just sitting him like every other game or whatever. So I feel like DeAndre Ayton, it's like the same sort of case, and like they probably used any excuse that they could to like sit that dude. Like, oh, you're sore? I just sit out. We need to play this dude.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm less worried about DeAndre.
Yeah, and they probably were trying to jockey for some sort of trade, right? Because they had drafted Klinging, and then who knows if they were really serious about taking that center from China, I believe. I don't know why. Hansen Yang, that's his name. Yep. So they must have had scouts, right? And that this is, I mean, clearly they had a plan in place because he was taken like way before where he was mocked. I'll throw like a fantasy football term, but like they took a reach in terms of like what his ADP was. So kudos for them because he looks pretty good. So I'm sure we could probably put Ayton and Jake in that same kind of bucket where it was more situational, nothing serious, no serious like injuries. So there is, a trend in the right direction that we can expect them to have a healthier season. I forgot to mention Jared Vanderbilt. I think that's probably going to be another key cog that needs to play games next season. Good news is that, this has been his healthiest offseason. So he's actually had time to not rehab, but actually focus on his game and whatnot. So that's really exciting. The Marcus Smart point, I mean, I agree with you. Like, in terms of mileage, like his body is probably older than what his actual age is. And due to the nature, like just the physicality he plays with on both ends, like it makes sense. Now, I think one thing you mentioned pretty early in your original point, where I want us to kind of get to now, this is where, Rob Pelinka being patient in the season and kind of weighing his options in what types of trades are out there to add additional players, additional wings, or additional kind of point attack guards or defenders to the depth chart definitely kind of alleviates or mitigates like the risk to injury, right? So now you're not as reliant on Marcus Smart playing 30 plus minutes a night, or Jake LaRavia playing extended minutes, or some of these guys, Jared Vanderbilt, we can kind of throw him in there too, playing extended minutes because you're just trying to compete and throw something out there where if you have, I'm just going to throw a guy out there, maybe like Matisse Thybulle or my favorite guy, Ochai Agbaji. If you have that person to kind of throw in the mix, now you're kind of spreading out the minutes, and that kind of mitigates your, it helps your injury prevention, and it also probably makes you a stronger team through and through, like throughout the course of the 82 games, which is, it's kind of like you have like, the regular season can be looked as like a marathon or it's like a really long race. And then when it's the playoffs, like you just have to, like, that's like where it's like the war of attrition where you mentioned, you just kind of need to be the healthiest. And now it's a matter of, you're up against another team and you're trying to take away their strengths, and the other team is doing the same thing. And it really comes down to the star power and some, role players kind of coming through here and there. But if you're able to get to that position healthily, you're in a favorable spot. And, who wouldn't want to have a skinny Luka, right? And a LeBron, hopefully he's tapped in, and Austin Reeves kind of coming back for his comeback revenge story from last season's kind of disappointment in the playoffs. So I think that's a big factor, right? What needs to go right for them is they need to hit on that additional trade to add to their depth chart. What do you think there?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's the first thing I brought up, right? They were able to check mark everything except for that one point. And I don't even necessarily think that they need to, like, if they don't want to trade the 2031st first, like, okay, fine, that's fair, but at least be creative, because we do have 3 expiring contracts. And if we don't use at least one of them, then I don't think we did our due diligence. Like, we can find something. Like, there's a way to upgrade this roster even without using the 2031st first, especially come the deadline, because those expiring contracts should be worth something. And hopefully, like, a guy like Dalton Connect, and not saying that we need to trade Dalton Connect, but I'm going to assume that he's not going to look any worse than he did in Summer League, being surrounded by so many good NBA players who can dish him the ball. I'm going to assume that by the trade deadline, Dalton Connect's value will have revived itself to the point where I think we'll have more options at our disposal, And so, do the Lakers need to make a trade in order to, like, get into that championship level tier? I absolutely think so. I don't think it needs to be that, like, oh, we got to get Herb Jones or bust sort of thing. But I do think, to your point, we need to get someone like Matisse Thybulle, or can we get, if he's healthy, like Haywood Highsmith from the Nets, who the Heat just salary dumped that dude, Now, you got to do your due diligence and make sure that he is healthy, but I'm pretty sure we can get that guy on the cheap. And so if we can even bring just one of those players in and, like, everybody else is healthy, then I'm feeling a lot better about this team, because not only have we improved the now, but we still have our assets as well. So, now, if we can get Andrew Wiggins and the price is lowered, then yeah, absolutely, let's do that. But I think there are other creative ways to get the same sort of impact. And then the other thing too is, I feel like come the buyout market, the Lakers should be one of the top teams once again, angling for whoever gets bought out, whether that's, if he's healthy, Chris Middleton, or like KJ Martin out of the Jazz, insert some sort of like wing or something, that doesn't even need to be a starter for us, but can help, like, round out the edges a little bit.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Now, let me ask you this. So and I've said this a bunch on my podcast, and it's a kind of an assumption that I'm making and I'm baking into, season 1 into season 2. How much do we see JJ Redick and this coaching staff really improving around the margins in terms of the scheme? And now I do feel like there are players around what he really preaches, and what's the what are the chances that we see kind of more of an improved effort there, of synergies, like between offense and defense, and just overall time, right? Like, like we threw in Luka out of nowhere, so, like, all the plans kind of changed in the middle of the season, which is really hard to do. So I think that's a big factor, right, heading into next year, is that, like, if we do see that click, because I never felt like the offense looked, like, really good. It just was a lot of isolation ball. What I will say, and I'm sure we'll get into it in the second segment, is I really like how Slovenia uses Luka. Like, there's like a concerted effort of using him on and off ball. Of course, he's gonna have his on ball reps. He's just so gifted, but seeing him play off ball and looking spry and just using, his, new and improved kind of agility, really, lends the defense to just collapse. And then he has, like, so much that he can do at his arsenal. So give me your thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I thought JJ did a phenomenal job last year dealing with all of the different iterations of the team. And I actually think that, and I agree with you, I think he did schematically, he drew up a lot more interesting stuff to stem the tide defensively versus offensively. I was expecting more just because of what we know of JJ as a player. I was expecting, and we actually saw, I felt like we saw a lot more play calls and sets during preseason, and we're like, oh man, this is gonna be sick. And then it kind of just, like, dissipated throughout the year. I understand that a lot of that is probably due to different personnel changes, and then Luka's here, Anthony Davis is out, so I'm sure they, like, shifted some of their priorities towards just holding up the defense or whatever. But yeah, I think this coaching staff has a lot to left a lot of meat on the bone in terms of improvement. So I think we should naturally see incremental progression, especially now that we'll have an off season to really integrate Luka, because we have to remember, like, we did that shit on the fly. It's still kind of crazy that we did that on the fly. I will say though that it's funny because even with all of the different iterations of teams, and it's still going to definitely be an adjustment period for JJ, because this season, like, we are bringing in like 4 pretty big new faces, and like Marcus Smart, DeAndre Ayton, Jake LaRavia, maybe 3. But yeah, those are 3 huge, factors to the team. I will say though that even though they're new names, I feel like even if you go back to the beginning of last season, the types of templates that we've had on this roster have not been too dissimilar, if that makes any sense. I feel like the Lakers have been playing modern ball pretty well for a good while now. Like, even if you look at DeAndre Ayton, who does he sort of mimic? It's kind of like AD. I'm not calling him AD. It's kind of like AD. And it's going to sound blasphemous, but like, when D'Lo was here, we just got a souped up, like, the best version of D'Lo in a 6'9" version of him. You know what I mean? But yeah. Luka plays like that crafty game. He has the ball in his hand. So even for me, that's why I was never too worried about starting the season off last year with D'Lo, because I was 100% sure that if we traded D'Lo, now we traded him for DFS, but I figured eventually we would replace that type of playmaking. And we ended up replacing D'Lo's playmaking with like the best playmaker you could get, But to my point, I was pretty confident that, like, even if D'Lo was still on the team, I knew that once we shipped him off, that we would eventually replace that sort of thing. And we would still keep that, at least 3 ball handlers on the court at the same time, et cetera, et cetera. And here we are with LeBron James, Luka Doncic, and Austin Reeves. And so in terms of like the coach's improvement, I think it'll just naturally improve with like having an off season and a training camp with Luka Doncic. And even though we have new faces, again, I think you can sort of, mix and match the types of players that we have now to similar players that JJ Redick even had last season. And I don't think it should be too difficult. And if anything, like, I feel like this roster makes a lot more sense than what we started the year off with, obviously, last year. So yeah, maybe things will level out as well as people figure JJ Redick out. But I think to both of our points, JJ left a lot of meat on the bone with regards to offense. And we know that that's an area of the game that JJ Redick should be locked in on. And now he has better spacing all around. And so I'm looking forward to, seeing JJ's growth as well as a coach, as well as the coaching staff. So.
Yeah, and I think one other area that I'm excited to see the Lakers improve upon now with Luka. Obviously, we did trade away 2 starters. We lost AD, so there was a hole there at center, and then there was also a hole at Max Christie's spot, which, going into next season, we've filled both of those holes with kind of light versions of it, however you want to call it. But I am excited to see a little bit more variations on the defensive end, right? So like if we can see some of that drop coverage, which I think is important to play during the regular season, it's good to have that switching defense, but just I felt like that in the regular season and in the playoffs, teams can figure that out pretty quickly. And, even the better teams, it's not the optimal situation where one knock that I had is just giving up switches so easily. I really hope that there's a little bit more pride and attention to just how habitual you need to be on both ends of the floor, like if it's defense or if it's offense. And that's something that I'd like to see really drilled in from the coaching staff down to the captains and the players, where you're taking every regular game season seriously. And I really feel like now in today's NBA, because of how, load management and how there's like rest and whatnot, you really need to kind of keep building upon each game. And those habits come so important because, like, I'll take us back to the game 1 of the playoff series last year against Minnesota. And it looked like the Lakers, like, they I think had like a week off because they no, they didn't have a week off. They actually, that last game of the season kind of mattered for them because of the seeding. But it just seemed like it didn't click for them because maybe it was just like the lack of habits, or maybe because the team, like there were so many iterations, like you said, for last year's roster where they just didn't take, like they didn't come out with the requisite energy, I feel like, coming into the playoffs. And maybe that's a knock on JJ Redick, as that was his first time coming into the playoffs. And I really believe that he will take a lot of those notes seriously from last year, where there were a lot of blind spots that kind of came up that, weren't present during the regular season. And that kind of makes sense, right? Because you're always game planning for another team, another situation, whether you're home or away. And now you're up against like one team that's fully locked into your team. So that's where I'd really key in on and see what how the team takes the regular season seriously, and that needs to come down from the coaching staff and the leaders of the team, which I think there is that potential that they will take all that seriously.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I actually think, I thought they took the regular season pretty seriously. I'm almost wondering whether they fooled themselves, actually, because they ended the season pretty strongly. Like they got the 3rd seed and all that stuff. They were beating OKC, and I almost feel like they were lulled into a sense of like, oh, we're like, we're the number 3 seed even without Anthony Davis, etc. And things seemed like they were clicking. I just think they were not prepared for that athletic wrecking ball that was Minnesota. And maybe they probably weren't prepared as well, because, like when Anthony Davis got traded, like we rattled off like 9 of 11 wins, with Jackson Hayes as their starting center. I don't think they factored in how much of a toll that probably took on the rest of the team to just uphold that type of intensity. Like it was actually miraculous that we were still like a top 5 defensive team without Anthony Davis. And so I think it's a little bit of like, by the time we faced Minnesota, they were like, oh, we're on empty and we can't handle this type of athleticism and explosiveness. And then obviously there was those weird quirks where game 3, what would have happened if, Luka Doncic wasn't throwing up all over the place and all that stuff, even though we all know that Minnesota was the better team. There were some different factors there, but yeah. And then to your point about the switching, it's funny because even if they do that this year, I think last year I hated it. But this year, after having watched some like Jake LaRavia and Marcus Smart tape, the Grizzlies switched a lot, and they were able to switch a lot because of those players like that.
Yeah.
Marcus Smart and Jake LaRavia just coming up to the point of attack and like communicating very well. And even if like, let's say they got beat by a quick first step, like those are the types of players who kind of just stick with it. And so if they want to switch a little bit, like I'm not too mad if Jake LaRavia, Marcus Smart, and like a guy like Vando are on the court. But yeah, to your point, I would like them to vary it up a little bit so that they have different looks. But if there were ever a year to, be a little bit more switchy, we probably have the personnel to do it this year.
Yeah, and I think probably the next line of, or I guess the next point there is who's going to be your low man, right? Because eventually someone's going to get some penetration to the paint, or at least towards the basket. And is LeBron at age 40 or Ayton, like, are they ready to kind of get in position and, either take a charge or play vertical and not foul at the rim? I think the problem last year is that we had either LeBron not making those, and I'm not attacking LeBron, so it's just during the regular season, like he picks his spots, which is totally fair. But I think we're definitely going to see an upgrade from Hayes, because Hayes, I like him on the perimeter, but oftentimes like he will get overzealous when he's defending the paint and the rim, because it's his background. Like he played volleyball. He was a star volleyball. So he wants to spike the ball. So like he wants to reject the shot. And oftentimes like NBA players, and depending on the guard or the player, like they're just so crafty that they can just take that hit or whatever and draw a foul and most likely get an and one. So I think Ayton, like if we get I don't want to set high expectations and be like, okay, we're going to get Phoenix Suns, like NBA finals, like Ayton's like guarding, Giannis expectations. But like if we can get like 60-70% of that, and if he's locked in at most of the time on the defensive end and is playing vertical, I mean, like I'm sure you've done plenty of breakdowns of Ayton, but like between his height, his wingspan, his agility, his athleticism, like he can play kind of like AD. And we saw how the defense was with, having that rim protector. And it's just so important, like in today's NBA, that you do your best guarding the perimeters and fighting over screens to kind of contain ball handlers around the perimeter. But there's only so much you can do in today's NBA. Like you can't hand check, so players are some way going to get to the rim. It's just kind of geared towards that, like the rules and the settings and the way the players play. So if you can kind of mimic some of what AD used to do at the rim, there you go. There's like a few possessions that you have created to go the other way. And I do expect this team to be a little bit better in transition next year. There are a little bit more athletes. Like I've seen some tape of Jake LaRavia like taking the rock and just kind of playing grab and go. Like I see Marcus Smart. I think you just did a video, and I remember him when he was eventually kind of like the quote unquote point guard for the Celtics, and he played like really well as a point guard for something that was kind of out of his nature. He didn't come in as that prospect, I should say. But I think that's valuable. And it's kind of a step up from last year's team.
Yeah, I agree. And to your point, the low man is going to be like a big thing for the Lakers. DeAndre Ayton can definitely fill that role. And I think it'll help that like the people flanking him up at the top will be somewhat of an impediment before those players get to the rim. And actually, I like that for guys like Smart and LaRavia, like even if they get beat, they typically try to fight back into the play. So like Ayton or whoever's back there shouldn't be on their own. They should the ball handler should, whoever's trying to finish at the rim should still feel pressure from LaRavia and Smart or whoever sort of shadowing them all the way to the rim. And so DeAndre just has to be there as some sort of impediment. And I think we should be okay. I'm interested in seeing who, along with DeAndre, joins him with regards to that rim protection aspect, whether it's Koloko getting sort of like really progressing and getting that bump, or whether Jackson Hayes actually improves. Maxi Kleber is a funny guy because he's like a really good switch. Like when he was healthy, he was really good as like a mobile switching big. And he's usually the type of guy who like does all that dirty work stuff in there as well. But we'll see, because this dude is like going to be 33 years old now. So yeah.
It's crazy how long he's been in the league. I feel like I still remember him crushing our Lakers' hopes. Like I feel like he always hit like big shots against us. So hopefully better days are ahead of him, and he can be our, I guess, JJ Redick's kind of prototypical pick and pop big, which he really loves and adores. Let's segue from our first segment here to Luka Doncic. So they just defeated today. They defeated Israel. I believe the score was 106-96. He dropped in 37 points, almost a near triple-double, 11 rebounds, 9 assists. And what seemed like, just from the highlights, because I don't have access, but seemed like a really complete game from him on both ends of the basketball. And something that has been really exciting to watch is just him carrying this team. There's like literally no like NBA caliber talent on his team, and he's legit handling his own against a lot of these teams that actually have NBA players and NBA talent. Talk to me about what you see differently a little bit from a short Lakers stint version of Luka and what we see here in a new improved Luka Doncic, and then if you can juxtapose to like all the players that we just talked about in the Lakers lens with Luka.
Yeah, I mean Luka, I think the biggest thing is like he doesn't look that vastly different from what we saw. He obviously looks slimmer. I think the biggest difference that I see with Luka is just overall endurance. I mean, just to your point, like every team is geared towards stopping Luka in these like EuroBasket play, and he's still first in points per game, 32.4 points per game, second in assists, 8.4, first in steals per game, 3.2 during this first round bracket play. That to me is kind of indicative of like where Luka probably stands endurance wise. The fact that he's able to be as active as he has been defensively.
Yeah.
And look, he's never going to jump off the page for you, but just the fact, like, even like these incremental bumps from Luka with regards to effort is like such a huge difference, because he's already super strong on his own. So when he's making that extra effort to sort of all of a sudden lunge for the ball and take it all the way down himself, or to stand his man up in the post and get the strip, like dive out of bounds and save the ball. Like when your superstar is doing that, like, I mean, it changes the whole dynamic of the team. And as we saw last year, even when with Luka still working his way back from the injury and the conditioning, in those games when Luka was like really giving the effort defensively, that's how the Lakers were able to beat Denver in Denver, because all of a sudden everybody was like super active. Luka was able to be a wall defensively, but now we're seeing in EuroBasket play, even just that incremental like 10% extra burst from him is huge. And so to me, it's been incredible that, I guess the offensive numbers are not too crazy, but given the fact that, to your point, like he's the only NBA player on that roster and teams are literally gearing everything towards him, and he's still able to cut them up the way that he has been and look pretty like slick and fluid doing so. But then on the defensive end, he's rotating, he's fighting through screens, he's like jumping the passing lane, taking it all the way himself. I think for Luka, honestly, it's just, to me, endurance and conditioning, and can he be the same player or much of the same player in the fourth quarter as he is in the first quarter? And so far, it looks like he has the stamina to be able to do all that. And it bodes well for this upcoming Lakers season if we can get this type of Luka. Now the question is, like, can he sustain this throughout an 82 games? I think he can. And he looks motivated. So it's been fun and exciting to watch, because if we had any doubts about, whether this roster is lacking and all that stuff, like, it starts and ends with how your best player looks. And so far, Luka looks good.
Yeah, that's such a good point about, Luka being able to conserve some of that energy, but also being able to play that 10% extra energy on the defensive end, but having enough gas in the tank in the fourth quarter. Where I think that matters a ton is, we talked about like the coaching staff and the scheme, and we saw the defense play pretty well for like, what was it, like 20 game stretch where like they were like top 5 in the NBA in defensive rating, but the offense never clicked. So, and it seemed like a lot of times where it was just a lot of isolation ball and Luka, hey, go figure it out. Or it's kind of my turn, your turn. Like LeBron has it, Reeves has it, or Luka has it. What kind of excites me is we're seeing more energy towards the defensive end from him, but also when he grabs boards, like this dude is legit sprinting up the court and like looking to attack. It's not like from my memory, it was just him being methodical and just being a little kind of seeing where everyone is at and kind of letting the game come to him. But now it's like, okay, he's kind of playing like that orca. He's like looking to, attack his prey as a predator, which is really fun to see. And I think, now if you put him alongside, okay, now you have LeBron, Ayton, if he's rim running, like that's going to be massive, because he's not playing with a lob threat right now. He's playing with a lot of like, I don't even know if they're considered big men. They're just kind of like stretch fours that are kind of playing as big men, because that's just how the makeup of this team is. But it's exciting to see, man. Like Luka looks really good. And if we do see an improved offense for this Lakers team, I could very well make the argument, make the case that, okay, Luka should have more energy in the tank come the fourth quarter, because if the offense is clicking and humming for all of these players, and now you add in another play finisher in Ayton, who, if I have the stat correctly, I mean, he was shooting 50, I think he shot 57, 58% last year, which is awesome in terms of efficiency. You have a team where, he should have energy in the tank. Like he should not be tired come the fourth quarter. And I know there's like a lot of games where Luka comes out firing like in the first quarter, and then he kind of like fizzles out a little bit. And one thing I will say also that's encouraging is he's getting to the free throw line a lot, and he's shooting a very, very efficient clip at the free throw line. So I don't know if he also practices free throws, but he's also, improved upon that. And if that is also something that's true and serious, then truthfully, we may see a different type of, we may need to change our expectations for his season next year, because a lot of these efficiencies, if they do true hold, then he may have that MVP season that everyone's kind of, Vegas and everyone is thinking about.
Yeah, I agree. And especially if he can get to the basket more, continue to draw fouls in that way, the Lakers should be able to live at the line, and that'll be a huge factor. And yeah, to your point about the transition game, like when Luka is able to grab and go himself, like I know he'll grab the rebound and do the outlet pass, and that's like the easiest way to get buckets. But apart from that, if Luka's able to start dribbling the ball down the court, everybody's eyes end up turning towards him, even if he takes 3 dribbles, right? And then everything opens up regardless. So yeah, to your point, like they're like small little changes that you don't think are like a big deal. And you're like, some people might say, oh, you guys are galaxy braining it. Like Luka's did this last year, but even those small incremental changes in Luka's game make such a huge difference, because he's already that good that any additional, improvements you make around the margins is incredible and huge. So
yeah, wait till we see his 42-inch vert next year, and he's dunking on dudes.
Yeah, I need to see the off the backboard windmill dunk that he does.
That would be that's a player that you and I would make on 2K.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
It's like all the sliders are up, like playmaking, free throw shooting, 3-point shooting, and then now you have dunks added to the mix.
Yeah, I mean, if you fuse Maxi Kleber and Luka Doncic, a healthy Maxi Kleber and Luka together, and that's the perfect player.
100%. So it looks like I think they've advanced into the tournament, and I think they're in single elimination phase. I wouldn't mind if this upcoming game is his last game of the year, of the season. Selfishly, as a Lakers fan, we've seen enough, and I feel like every other clip, obviously sans like the and ones and him yelling at refs and whatnot, which I enjoy. But he's always slipping on the court. So like, it's like, dude, what's happening on the court where like no one is, cleaning the surfaces after like the possession change, or B, is it just, we may have to just get used to Luka falling, kind of like how we used to do that with Anthony Davis. But I wouldn't mind him coming back home pretty soon.
100% agree. No, yeah. I mean, he already had that, calf or knee buckling scare or whatever, where it looked like Kobe Bryant's head on Andrew Bynum's knee. I was like, yeah, let's, cool. He's healthy. It's good to go. Training camp is what, in like 4 weeks? So yeah, we're bringing back home.
It's just, cut your vacation a bit earlier and come back home and rest. But yeah, I mean, it has been nice, and it has been fun to kind of watch him play basketball while it's like this lull period, and him still be able to improve it and obviously compete at a really nice level. Let's segue into a story, an very interesting topic, because as Lakers fans, if you go back in the time machine, we trade for Anthony Davis, and one other player that was open to potentially joining the Lakers was one Kawhi Leonard. And as a fan of the team, we were all really closely watching and monitoring what would happen with Kawhi Leonard, because truthfully speaking, it did not look like he was going to extend with the Raptors. I know that was one of the teams that he met with and was going to have a conversation with. But it, all fingers were pointing towards him, going to LA and playing in California. What was obviously interesting throughout all of this is the list of demands that not only was Kawhi was making, but also his Uncle Dennis was making to the owners and the front offices, and just some crazy demands. Ownership stake of the the team, private jets, homes, just crazy requests. So your fellow countryman Pablo Torres came out with this dope investigation on what truly happened with Kawhi Leonard joining the Clippers. So wanted to get your thoughts on all of this, and it seems like in the pre-show you were able to listen to the whole podcast and episode. I just caught, I'll be honest, I just caught bits and pieces. So would love to kind of get your summary on all of the minutia of it all. So, and then we'll take it from there. Just like I said earlier, we're keeping it light on today's show.
Yeah, I'll be honest, and I'll say I didn't watch the whole show. I have it queued up, and you told me pre-show that he just had Mark Cuban on, so I'll watch them in tandem together tomorrow. But
back to back. Yeah,
everything that I was able to gather, I mean, it's just hilarious type stuff. It's just typical Clippers, like quiet summer. I mean, they wish they were in the doldrums of the end of summer, but not for them. And so something about the Clippers, there's just like drama always just seems like the weirdest, funkiest drama too. It's not like Lakers type drama where it's like, this is Hollywood, right? It's like Clippers. It's like, dude, what are you guys doing?
WTF?
Yeah, and the fact that you think it would change with a guy like Steve Ballmer, like it's Microsoft, he has all the money and everything is state of the art, et cetera, et cetera. Even with that, it still feels like there's something like slimy or weird going on with them at the end of the day. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's to me, it was just funny because it's not like any of this is new. The newest wrinkle is the weird aspiration, like tree company that didn't actually ask him to do anything. Like just the fact that it revolves around this like fake tree company makes it all the more funnier, because all the other stuff, like we could piece together, this stuff was happening in 2019. That's why Jeannie Buss didn't want to get involved with all of this, like potentially illegal things, or I'm sure a bunch of NBA teams do very shady things, but this was feeling pretty blatant, And so the extra tidbit of just how, I mean, if everything that Pablo says is true, and to me, the thing that I watched that I was kind of like damning was, the employee that they interviewed could be lying, whatever. But the fact that the employee themselves said, hey, we're kind of doing this to circumvent the cap. The fact that you even have that quote, and I'm assuming the employee might not even be like plugged in with the NBA. And if they're using verbiage like circumventing the cap, then they heard that from somebody else, like if they even have any sort of like trace of that type of discussion, then yeah, I don't know, man, like it'll be crazy and interesting to see how hard the league will come down on such an influential and rich owner like Steve Ballmer, because I know that it'll have trickle down effects on the rest of the league, right? And all of the other owners. And so yeah, to me, one, it's just funny because it's the Clippers. It's like such a Clipper thing to do. And then two, I'm waiting to see like, like how true is this? Like how much is the league going to let the Clippers get away with this? Because it does seem like just league wide, they let teams get away with stuff. But because this is such a public story, are they going to use the Clippers as an example here of like, hey, don't do this type shit. If you do, you better not get caught in this way, So I'm kind of waiting on pins and needles. One, to hear that Mark Cuban interview with Pablo Torre, and two, just to see how they're going to come down in the Clippers for this, because what's even funnier about all this is like the Clippers don't have anything to show for this. In fact, I don't want to go this far, but I'm like, I don't know, man. Maybe Silver is gonna do the Clippers a favor by like taking Kawhi off their books or something and freeing up some of their cap space, because me, like, going back to 2019 when we were all Kawhi hunting, 3-star hunting or whatever, there was always a little part of me that was like I wanted Kawhi, sure, just to win the championship, but a part of me was also like, I don't know, I feel kind of dirty having like Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James, and 8. Is anybody going to give us respect? And if anything, this could tarnish LeBron's career. Now, fans always find a way to tarnish LeBron's career because we ended up winning in the bubble and all that stuff. But like the way that everything turned out, where we were able to still win the championship with like our plan C option of KCP, Avery Bradley, and Danny Green. Like I wouldn't have it any other way. And if there was any Clipper, ironically enough, that I was kind of like bummed out about missing out on, it was always the Paul George stuff, because that preceded AD, that preceded LeBron James. Like that dude was supposed to come here first. When LeBron James came, they were supposed to come together. And say whatever you will about like PG and his weird like podcast antics and like dropping in the playoffs or whatever. Like I've always liked his fluid, wingy sort of game. You know what I mean? Versus Kawhi's like robotic, like, yeah, he gets you like 28 points no matter what. But it's like, it always felt sort of clunky to me. Whereas like Paul George was like, I always have that what if in the back of my head of like, if he was healthy, and I know he hasn't been consistently healthy, but like PG, LeBron, and AD would have been like the perfect trio.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Trio. So the Kawhi stuff, very funny because again, it ended up not amounting to anything, but now we're going to see like what this is going to amount to in the end and what it's going to mean for the Clippers and the NBA.
Let me ask you this question, and I'm not sure if Pablo gets into this, but the NBA also did their own formal investigation. Was this before this company was created?
I think they did the investigation on the Uncle Dennis stuff, so it might have happened before because I think they entered their promotional partnership with this company like 2021, if I'm not mistaken.
That's what I'm
by this point, too. By the time that Kawhi had already signed the deal or whatever, I'm sure the NBA was just like, whatever you guys do, whatever the hell you want. So I'm sure there wasn't a follow-up, which is why I think Pablo's story is extra interesting, because it's like, you guys already got Kawhi. What other, I guess it was to have him stay, but I don't know if Bomber, I think from Mark Cuban's end, and I'll have to listen to his interview with Pablo. Like, it seems like Mark was like, hey, they got scammed. This is why this happened. NBA teams always do this, and Bomber got scammed. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's find out, because according to some of the insider employees of that company, like, they have the verbiage that they were circumventing the cap, so who's scamming who here, so we'll see.
Yeah. And then I also, there was another report that came out. It's kind of funny now there's like a lot of people coming out of the woodworks giving their recollection and the facts of everything that happened. There was I think his name is John Kralisis. He covers Boston sports journalist. But he talked about that the number that Pablo reported was only half of what Kawhi was collecting. He was collecting double. Now, my question is, was this whole, initiative, this company, just a whole front to just offload all that money to Kawhi Leonard?
Sounds like a money laundering scheme from like oligarchs or whatever.
I can't wait for the Netflix doc. That's what I told my friends. I was like, this is going to be like a sequel to like, going from the previous Donald Sterling, the previous regime of the Clippers story, and now to the Steve Ballmer situation, where if you look, I mean, there's always something that happened, which is like, if you go back to the bubble days, like the situation with what was his Lou Williams going and leaving the bubble and food, and then now this is just absolutely crazy. I heard that one of the punishments is like maybe Kawhi Leonard has to forfeit his contract, and now he's a free agent, which is absolutely wild. And there's like no team that can offer him much money other than OKC Thunder. I think they have like $9 million of exception money to offer. Imagine Kawhi Leonard on the Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be. I think for the Clippers' sake, it will be so like very like hilariously poetic for them to do all of this to try and build like the best team and best, consistent era of their existence, only for that to be the thing that really handicaps them moving forward. Because if they're stripped of like multiple first round picks, then I don't know how they're going to be able to build this team for the future. I don't know what they're going to. They just signed Brook Lopez, who's like 37 years old. Like, what is this team gonna do in the future without any draft picks? Like, they're gonna have to like go crazy into the money balling and like sign overseas dudes like Juancho
Yeah.
Hernangomez in that Hustle, whatever movie that was with Adam Sandler. Like they're gonna have to have a team full of those guys and hit on every single one of them because they might have to fold the franchise. And again, it's ironic because Steve Ballmer is the owner. Everything seemed to be going like the up and up,
In
like
the right direction. Yeah.
Mark Walter direction. And then for this to sort of upend everything. And again, we'll see how serious it is. But if we're thinking worst case scenario for this team, like this could be what kind of undoes the Clippers again, just when it seemed like, for the longest while, the fans and media who hated the Lakers would use the Clippers as an example of how to do things, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
even as early as like last season or whatever, like, hey, why don't you like the Clippers? Consistent. And, they spend money on this, they spend money on that, and et cetera, et cetera. And like, well, here we are.
It's absolutely wild. Like you made a good point where like the Lakers situation, it's always been Hollywood-esque. Like, either it's positive or negative. It's always kind of like in the movie kind of spotlight. And then this is always just the Clippers situation is always just like you're a writer. And it's like, if you want to come up with a basketball, if you want to try to come up with a basketball show, you probably can't even write or script this stuff. Like, it's just absolutely insane. Like, it doesn't really belong in terms of like the genre of basketball and just the management of sports and teams and whatnot. Yeah, so
The Office.
yeah, it kind of is. So I think you alluded to this, but like where I'm really interested in is like how serious Adam Silver, takes this and does he use this as an example because I do believe that like these shenanigans do happen with other teams and owners and endorsements are kind of like wink wink deals, but teams never get caught for it. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. And I truly think that the fact that like Kawhi Leonard, in whether or not it's like on him or this company, which by the way is I saw all the tweets like come out of like the woodworks, like people were like going back to the Clippers timeline and looking at the tag. I clicked the profile and it's like just some person. Like was it like not a serious account? Like I don't understand. Did you see that or notice that?
No, I didn't.
When you have a minute, go to I'm sure you'll see it on, or you could just go to the Clippers Twitter. If you search, I forget if it's Aspire or Aspiration, like what the full tagline is. They tagged this company multiple times on their like game day posts, and they would say, "Oh, happy birthday to John Wall!"
Right.
Tag or comment below and we'll plant a tree. That was the whole point of this business, is to kind of like, it's like, okay, Steve Ballmer's way to market like this environmental friendly type company initiative. And, he's connecting it to the team. So like anytime a user or someone on the platform would comment tree or whatever, they were supposedly supposed to go plant a tree. Whether or not that happened, I guess it didn't. There's like these legal proceedings that are happening and the company went bankrupt and they're pleading guilty, obviously. And now all these employees are kind of like coming up with what you said earlier, cap circumvention. So like that's kind of where things are getting like a little hairy, where there was something happening in the works. We don't know the full story. I guess we need to listen to this Mark Cuban Pablo Torres episode, because Mark Cuban, and I know I mentioned this to you in the pre-show, but he's on Team Ballmer. So how much of that is like, okay, maybe he's covering some of his tracks as a previous owner, which I guess like now he probably shouldn't really care because he's already sold the team. But I mean, reputation matters a lot for all these egomaniacs, because when you're that rich, it matters like how you are perceived. So I get it in the end. But yeah, I'd be really keen to pay attention to that episode, because it'll probably be a good summary of everything that happened in the previous show related to the reportings, and then what Mark Cuban has in store for Pablo. All right. Anything else on that? This Clippers fiasco and everything Clippery?
No, not really. Again, it's the Clippers, and hope the Lakers learn from this if they've done anything.
Mark Walter, I hope you're paying attention
exactly
to all of what's happening.
The only thing I'll say is like, I wonder if I don't know. I mean, the NBA is coming into so much money, and like if you're seeing, like I'm not a huge baseball guy, but like I just learned about Shohei's contract and the fact that he can defer his like $700 million till he retires and only take like, I think he's only getting paid like $1 million the next 10 years. And so being able to do that allows the Dodgers to like build out the rest of their team. And so will the NBA ever get to a point where it's kind of like the MLB where there is no salary cap, you know, because of stuff like this, and they're trying to circumvent things this way. Like, if everybody's doing it and they're doing it with these weird, strange money laundering schemes, and there's no way you can fully police it, like, will there ever come a point where the NBA just says, you know what, fine, let's just open it up? And then at that point, the Mark Walters of the world, literally the Dodgers, are going to, you know, continue to thrive. But I don't know. We'll see.
What's weird to me though is like Kawhi never took any less money by my count, right? Like he always took the max deal. So like,
Yeah,
it's how much of it. I mean, there is some of that this is happening, but like he took he took the max money allotted as a superstar from the NBA sense, but then he also took this money under the table, which also is not legal. I don't think it's legal, but it does fall within these rules that you know they're breaking. But I would get it though, like if like in your example with Shohei Ohtani, and this actually happens in the NFL too, where they oftentimes restructure deals, so they'll like either kind of like front load or back load contracts to sign other players or kind of make money work, or you know they add in incentives to increase the money. It's kind of crazy how the NFL kind of has that power as well as the MLB, where the not the Lakers, but the NBA doesn't. So I guess, yeah. How much of it, like Kawhi has always taken the super max. So like, is he just pocketing more money than other
I think
stars?
it literally was just to keep him on the team. One, to get him to, and Uncle Dennis to sign, and then to get him to, I forget how many extensions he's like signed with the Clippers, like at this point, maybe one or two, probably to just get him locked up as well. So it was just like an incentive to get him to like not go anywhere and
just
show him
stay.
like, hey, you're not going to get this type of money anywhere else, even if you sign your super max or whatever. So
Man, that's crazy. Yeah, let's see what happens on Pablo's next episode with Mark Cuban. And again, like I said earlier in the episode, we're 30 days away from Lakers basketball, which is crazy. And you know, I'm sure the season is going to pick up for us and the content and whatnot. So again, Johnathan, thank you so much for joining today's chill episode where, you know, we talked a little bit of the, you know, what could go right and wrong for the Lakers, as well as Luka Doncic looking spry with the, you know, the Team Slovenia and EuroBasket, and of course the Clippers fiasco. Tell everyone where they can find you.
Omar, thanks for having me once again. It was fun. We still managed to like fill a whole hour of like, I think, pretty good conversation and content. Everybody play fantasy football in the meantime while you wait for the NBA. It's coming around the corner faster than we know. You guys can find me at Lakers Legacy Pod. If you want to follow my personal account at JHUN88 on X, watch my Marcus Smart video. Focus mainly on his playmaking and point guarding skills versus his defense, because I know that's something that everybody covers. So check that out when you have the time. But otherwise, let's everybody watch Pablo Torre's expose with Mark Cuban tomorrow. That's a Friday required viewing before the Chargers and it's a Dolphins.
The
Chiefs game in Brazil. So there you go. And let's take that into the weekend. Pablo Torre content. Why am I publicizing Pablo Torre's content?
He's a fellow countryman.
Yeah, exactly.
Filipino.
And what's funny is because of Pablo Torre, now every NBA executive is going to make sure that they cover their tracks like crazy. Before they didn't have to, but now that they got this Filipino.
I didn't even talk about it. What's going to happen with Jalen Brunson? Because that dude took like $100 million less.
That's what Pablo Torre said, right? Oh, we'll have to do another podcast just to talk about that. Those guys, they got to start looking at their books. They got to if there's any bodies, they have to take care of that right now before he starts his investigation. Really cool, by the way, really cool niche to find, like the sports journalism investigative reporting. It's really interesting.
I really like it. So
By the way, Malik Beasley still a free agent. That's how Pablo Torre started all this off this summer too, and that's why I was advocating for Malik, because I knew that dude was innocent. Thanks to Pablo Torre finds out. So that's my last Pablo Torre plug. Again, thanks for having me. Go Lakers.
hey Pablo, if you ever want to join a pod with us, that would be absolutely fantastic. Maybe you need to pull on those Filipino roots.
Maybe
get that connect. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for either watching the show live or tuning into the show later on to wherever you catch your platform or podcasts on YouTube or Spotify. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks everyone. Peace.
See ya.